So welcome to episode 6 of building a website using Visual Studio 2022. In this video we're going to look at adding your own products. So we've done all the thing around identity, so now we're actually going to build the element that we actually need to use. So what is a model? A model is an object. So we've got a couple of examples of objects there. These are types of vehicles, and an object can be made up of various different things. So you can have a student as an object, you can have a teacher as an object. There's lots of things that can be characterized as an object. So we do that through the model element of what we call a class in ASP.NET. We need to store these objects somewhere, just like we do with identity. We store those. So we need to do the same sort of thing with objects. Now the best thing to actually do is to set up a database for identity and a database for objects and store each in their own area. Now there is a school of thought, well, why don't we just put them both in the same one? There's a risk of this, because if you generate a bug in one of those two areas, it's going to have a disastrous impact on both of them. So the best thing to do is to keep them separate and to ensure that you've got one database for your identity and one database for your objects. Now what we're going to be working on today is the estate agents, and I'm going to carry on with the normal area. Now we can simplify the object by having things like the location of the property, the type of property, price, and so forth. I've actually got a specific set which I'm going to be using in the video, so keep a lookout for those, and you might want to use something very similar for your project. Another term that we actually use in objects is CRUD. CRUD basically means create, read, update and delete. There is an element of CRUD in our project. So we need to be able to create a record, read a record, update a record, and possibly even delete that record. So that again is something that we will be able to do with our objects within this application. So what we'll do is we'll create a class, we'll then generate a controller for the class, and then we'll build the views. Sounds like a lot, but you're going to be surprised how easy it is. So let's move straight on to this. Okay, so in the last 5 episodes we've looked at various different operations that we can use in Visual Studio 2022 in order to build that website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the estate agency program that we started on, and I'm just going to show you some of the changes that I've made. I'm not actually going to go into the code, I'm just going to show you the program working so you can see it. And there's nothing in my application that hasn't been shown already. So I'm just going to fire it up now. There we go. So kind of looks as you'd expect. We've got an About Us page, we've got the privacy page, we've got the home page. We can go to the home page here. We've got the necessary spacing, we've got spacing down here and also spacing up there. If I log in, I can log in as a user using example.com. I'm going to pop in the password. Okay, that seems to be working fine. If we click here, that brings up the manage accounts. Now this is the manage.index I showed you in, I think it was episode 4. So we can make changes to this. Now just to show you how it works, if I go into the first name and I decided to change it from Joseph to Joe and hit save, just keep your eye on that there up there, and what happens is it now saves the user profile as Joe as opposed to Joseph. Things that we can also change includes email, password, we can add 2-factor authentication, and also download the user's details or delete the user entirely using these 2 options. That makes the software GDPR compliant. Okay, so that's all well and good, but we're actually building a website that is supposed to be an estate agency. So it makes sense that we're going to have to add some bits to it that makes it an estate agency. So if you remember, I told you a little bit about models. One of the things that we're going to need to do is create a model. So I'm going to do that now. So we're going to create a model by adding a new class. I'm going to call this class house, like so. And that now creates a class called house. Now, in order for me to proceed, I'm just going to start by setting up some variables. Now, some of those variables are going to be quite generic, so we need to use those. So the first one I'm going to use is a generic one. I'm going to use prop as we've shown you before, so prop tab, and I'm going to create one just called ID. The ID is to differentiate between the different instances of each entry on the database. And what happens is it creates a unique identifier for each one. So that's ID. So I don't need to do much more than that. The next one is going to be the owner's name. We're going to use a string for this. So I'm going to do that, and then owner name. Just going to call it like that. I'm not going to go too much into this, so we're just going to go string, and we'll stick with my property on that one. That's the property name for the owner. The next one is going to be the value of the property. So that's going to be an integer, and I'm just going to call that property value. And I'm just going to leave it for those four. I mean, normally you would have things like postcode and stuff like that, but I'm not going to get into all of that. Now the next thing I'm going to add, I'm going to ignore that top one. We need to make sure that these fields are filled in. So to do that, we use the term required. That basically means that those fields need to be done. Now as you can see, there's a little squiggly line under it. So I shall just click Control full stop. And we're going to use the component module data annotation. So that then basically pops that in. Another thing that I want to do with the owner's name is I don't want to use up the whole of the string. It can be quite a large amount of memory that's being used. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize it. So we're going to do a max length, and I'm going to set the max length. I'm not going to set it to 255, I'm just going to set it to 150. I'm going to say that the owner's name can't be anything more than 150 characters long. Another thing that we can add is that display name. So we're going to do that too. So display name, and I'm just going to put owner's name in there. And finally, the last thing that I really want to add is the data type. Okay, so in this case, the data type is going to be text, like so. Okay, so that's the owner's name done. Now you can see that there's like a squiggly line going on underneath there, so I'm just going to put a little question mark in here, just like so. And what the question mark means is actually this could be null, but the fact that we've actually got it required will overwrite that anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to pop it just down here. So I'm just going to pop it in there. Now the property name, I'm going to stick with 150 characters for the property name. We've got to make sure we get rid of this. So property name, like so, and it's also going to be a text. And again, I can pop a little, oops, a little question mark in there. Now for this final one, again, it needs to be required, so we're going to do that, like so. We don't need a max length because this is using an integer, so it's using a number. Property value, and the data type, well, let's have a look, see what we've got. Currency, that'll do, we'll use that one. Okay, we'll see what that looks like. I've not actually used the currency before, so we'll see how that comes across. Okay, so those are the main ones that we can do, and that's actually quite easy. So that's the model built. So I'll just save it, and we'll close it. Now another little bit of magic that the software can do for us is it can change that model into something more usable. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up to controllers, right click, add, and I'm going to do add scaffold item. Now under MVC we have an MVC with views using entity framework. So we're going to use that one. And what that should do is that should create a number of views that we can use with that model. So I'm going to go to add. So the model we're going to be using is house. The database context. Now I'm going to create a new one because I don't want it to use the same as the identity. So I'm going to have two databases for this. Now this one, I'm just going to change this here from ETGAs to home DB. So it's going to be called home DB context. Okay. There's going to be generic views, there's going to be reference scripts, and there's also going to be a layout page. It's going to be using a controller called house controller. So I'm happy with all of that. So I'm just going to click add. And what this will do is this will create all the files for me. So I don't actually have to do any work in terms of creating the files. So we'll just wait for that to kick in. It shouldn't take too long. Okay, there you go. They're all done. So this is the controller. We've seen a controller before because we used the home controller. So this is going to be slightly different. So this has got all the information regarding the model that we created. Now in order to use the model we need to set up the database. So in order to create the new database we need to use the migrations and the update. So I'm going to go over to our package manager console. We need to set up the first migration. So add migration. Now because there are two contexts, there's the identity context and the house context, I need to make sure I choose the right one. So over there on the right I've actually identified which one I'm going to be using. So it's a context and it's home DB context, and if you notice I'm using exactly the same case. So I hit return and hopefully we'll see that migration appear just below. Oh, I forgot to add the name, didn't I? Oops. It's going to be called init, as in initialize. So let that do its thing, and there it is. That's the initialize. So I'm going to simply update database, and I'm going to use that context again, and it is home DB context. Press return, and hopefully that will create the database that we're going to be using with our properties. So let's go and have a look in the database server and see if it's sitting in there. Here we go, and there it is there. So if I actually have a look at this, we'll go to view. Oh yeah, we want to go into the tables, and then we want to view the data. There you go. You see it's not as big as the other one, so it's got owner in it, it's got the ID, owner name, property, and property value. Okay, so that's working really well. However, where is all these views? So let's go and have a look in views. Well, we've got a new section here called houses, and we've got create, delete, details, edit, and index. So let's go and open that up. So I'm going to run this application a moment. Hopefully it'll be fine. Now because I haven't set up any links at the top here, we'll just go straight to it. So it is houses, and just press return, and there is the information. So this is all that so far. Now I'm going to hit create new. I'm going to call this one Fred's house. Property name the cave. Whoops, the cave. And I'm going to say it's worth about, what should we say, 100,000. Create. So there's Fred's cave. Okay, and you can see we can edit it. Back to list. We can see the details of it. Back to list. And we can delete it if we want. And it gives us a just to make sure, are you sure you want to delete it? So I'm going to go back to this because I'm not really that sure. I can create a new house. So we're going to call this one Barney's house. So this is Barney Rubble. The property is called Barney's Cave. And we're going to sell this one for just a little bit more because we know that Fred really doesn't like it. There you go. So we got, well, let's change the owner's name on that one because it shouldn't be Fred's house, it should be Fred Flintstone. Okay, and you can see that this is how this works, and you can start building up the data on this. Now, one of the problems is that I'm just doing this straight from the system. I've not had to log in at all. Ideally, I want to be able to log in first. So let's put a little bit of security on this, and also we can add it up here as well. So we're going to go over to, well, I'm going to close this. That information that was held is currently stored in the database, so we haven't got to worry about it in that regard. So we're going to go over to here, and I'm just going to reduce all these. We're going to go into controller, and you can see we got this house controller, and here we go. Now one of these is going to be the main house. Okay, so this is it here. Now I want to set this so that only authorized people can go onto it. So I can do that just by so I'm just going to use authorize as in authorization. Okay, yeah, I spelled it wrong. Knew I would because it's American. Now if I go back to here again, run it. So I set it to authorize. And we're going to go and find that index. So it was under house. You see it's immediately asking me to log in. I can't actually go onto it unless I log in first. You don't believe me? I'll just do that a moment. Example at example.com. Pop in the password. There we go. We can now log in. So that's how we get that authorization done. Now we can do that with all the other parts as well. So let's go in there and make those changes. So I want authorization throughout all of these. So I don't want anyone to kind of accidentally get into any of these. Okay, so this is edit. Just going to clear that one. I just want to make sure that nobody can access any of my pages without the appropriate authorization. So let's just get that done. Okay. Just make sure I've covered them all. Ooh, didn't do anything for that one, did I? Now the thing is with authorize, you can set authorization levels as well. I'm not going to do that. So that's it, job done. So now if anyone wants to access any of that information, they can't unless they've got login rights. Now we're going to go to views, and we're going to go to houses, and we can see them all there. What I need to do is go into shared, and we're going to go into layout, and just here I'm going to add a new link. So like so. Don't want that all the way over there. Okay, so we're going to do, now it's not the ASP controller home now, it's the ASP controller houses. It's not privacy, it's going to be index. And it's just, I'm just going to put properties, like so. Save it, run it, Okay, so we've got properties up here. We click on that, it won't let me in. I log in. I type in I didn't have to press login actually because it was already done. So let's just do example@example.com and pop in the password. Okay, now that I'm logged in as Joe, if I hit properties, I've now got access to this. Okay, if I log out as Joe, go into properties, it won't let me in. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video. Hope you've enjoyed that. Next video I'm going to show you how to add images. Okay, once again, if you liked what I've done, give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you can get all the latest information of anything new that I got coming out. Okay, until next time, bye.